Good afternoon, everyone. This is Queenie Clem with Queenie's Book Talk and Reviews, and I am your literary ambassador. And today I have Darliss Batchelor on my channel today. Welcome back. Welcome back. How are you?
I'm good, and thank you for having me today.
You're welcome. Now tell us a little about yourself.
I am a 7-time author. I'm a wife, a grandmother. Actually, we just had our second grandson. I think he's 9.5 weeks old. Our oldest grandson is 9, so there's a little bit of an age difference there. And I'm a mother. And let's see, what else can I say about myself? I'm a former computer programmer turned author. And, I guess that's all I can say about myself right now.
Okay. What is your genre?
I usually write Christian/inspirational or women's fiction.
Okay. Now tell us about your books.
Okay. I have 6 physical books. I have one book that is not a physical book, it's ebook only. And it is part of a multi-author project that I wrote with, I'm not even going to try to remember everybody's names, but it's a Mountain Men, Mafia Princess series of books. And my particular one is book 5 in the series, and it's called Edgar's Embrace. It is a romance novel, my first attempt at that, but that came out last year. My first book is Secrets. And it is, this is probably more inspirational fiction. It's about a church family. Everybody got a secret. And their secrets really cause people to have somewhat of a different perspective on who they are and what they are and why they're acting the way they are. The moral of the story I really want to get across in this book is that, instead of making assumptions about why people act the way they do, sometimes we see people and we think they're stuck up or we think they're mean. There's always a reason. And I think as Christians, we should really seek God and for their healing and to be a little bit more understanding as opposed to being what's the word I'm looking for? I think we just need to learn to be a little bit more understanding. And once we find out what's really underneath the facade, we can be a little bit better with people. So that's my first book, Secrets. My second book was this book. This is Hell is a Skyscraper, a trio of novelettes. I have 3 different stories in this book that they're unrelated. I just wasn't quite sure what to do with them when I wrote them, so I just put them all in one book and published it that way. There are 3 stories in here. The first one is called Mother May I, and it is about a teenager named Egypt. And Egypt is a bright young woman. She is the older sibling of 2 younger siblings. And her mother, let's just say she's not a really good mother. And she ends up with putting a lot of the responsibility on Egypt. And Egypt has to make a decision. And that is whether she should take a scholarship, a full ride scholarship, the dream that she's always held in her heart. Should she pursue that, or should she stay behind and make sure that her siblings are okay? The second one is called Twice Bitten. And it is a story about a woman who is, her and her husband, the story opens on the day that her last child has gotten married. So she's a new empty nester. She's had 5 children, and all of a sudden everybody's gone. She spent her life, taking care of them and raising them, and even into adulthood, she's always been there for them. And now all of a sudden she doesn't know what to do with herself. And if you will allow, I'd like to read the first chapter of that particular novelette now.
Yes.
The main character's name is Chriselle. Chriselle labored up the stairs. She walked past a few empty bedrooms and a full bathroom to the last room on the left. It was her daughter Leslie's bedroom. She entered the room with its soft orange sorbet-colored walls, wood floors, white bedroom furniture, and orange and fuchsia floral comforter. Sitting in the cantaloupe-covered chair near the window, Chriselle began to think about Leslie and Bryce's wedding earlier that day. "I now pronounce you man and wife. You may kiss the bride." Chriselle reminisced about her daughter's wedding while pulling a tissue from the box sitting on the side table. Those words were life-changing. They changed Chriselle's life when she said them over 30 years ago, and they changed her child's life today. Her last child, Leslie, was now officially someone's wife, complete with the change of a dress form and a moving van. Chriselle remembered all those years ago when she said those same vows. She had dreams and thoughts about what her life would be like as a missus. She just didn't know how big those dreams were at the time. The look of love in the eyes of Leslie and her new husband, Bryce, said it all. Their deep love and commitment was evident today. No one and nothing in the world could come between them today. Their minds couldn't even comprehend that anything in life could be better. However, sometimes things indeed change, and you find out that forever means something much shorter. The traditional wedding vows include a promise to stay together until death. Chriselle wondered if anything other than physical death counted. She felt like she died as a person, as a woman. All those years of raising children, taking care of a house, and over 30 years of being a wife caused her to forget what her life was like beforehand. Gazing out of the nearby window overlooking the family swimming pool, Chriselle realized Leslie wouldn't be home making blueberry pancakes for breakfast tomorrow morning. She wouldn't be sitting with Chriselle in the adult Sunday school class as she'd been doing since she became old enough to join her. Instead, she'd be in some exotic location enjoying her first days of marriage, not even thinking about the fact Chriselle felt lost. Chriselle moved to the bed and stretched her body across it, inhaling the residual signature scent of her youngest daughter. Her thoughts shifted to the night she sat in this bed with Leslie and read Bible stories. She recalled kneeling on this very floor with her to pray. The memory of Leslie announcing her engagement came to mind. That was when Chriselle felt she'd lost her purpose. All of her children, 3 sons and 2 daughters, had gone on with their lives. How dare they do that? They must have forgotten everything she'd done for them. She wiped runny noses, spent more time in the emergency room than she cared to remember, attempted to mend broken hearts, kept them clean and presentable, and introduced them to Jesus Christ. And what did she get in return? She got an empty house, and she found herself resentful of it. Yes, they often came to visit and brought their spouses and children. Still, Chriselle was overcome by emotional and physical emptiness. Drew, Chriselle's husband, came into the room just as she crushed her tissue and added it to the pile already established on the bed. She didn't want him to see her like this. She didn't want him to know about her pain. However, after looking into his eyes, she realized he already knew this pain almost as intimately as she did. He held her in his arms and stroked her hair, his best effort at comforting her. She didn't think he could feel it as deeply as she did. He had a life. She'd been a housewife and mother all these years. Now that the demands were different, Chriselle didn't know what to do with herself. Surrounded by Drew's arms, Chriselle couldn't remember the last time she felt the spark she and Drew once shared. She realized she didn't even feel a tingle. What happened to me? What happened to us? That's the first chapter of Twice Bitten that's in this book, Hell is a Skyscraper, a trio of novelettes. The third novelette in this is called Dimitri's Diary. And Dimitri is a young man he's telling the story as an adult, but he's talking about his childhood and upbringing. And let's just say Dimitri has a very tumultuous upbringing filled with abuse and uncertainty. And this story just tells his journey to healing. So this is this book has some good writing in it. They're not related stories, but they are very good stories. I mean, I look back at it myself here recently and realized, those are some really good stories. So, but that is Hell is a Skyscraper, a trio of novelettes. My third book is Something Else to Want. And the story in Hell is a Skyscraper, entitled Dimitri's Diary, features an aunt that is really the person Neely is obviously has some pain in her life somewhere, because she's mean and she's ornery and she's abusive. And so when I wrote Dimitri's Diary, I didn't have any idea exactly about why Neely was the way she was. And so what I did was I wrote this book, Something Else to Want, and it gives us a glimpse into why Neely became the adult she did. She has a father who thinks that, well, actually her parents, both of them, think that she should want something else when she comes out of high school. They expect that she should want to be a housewife and mother. And that is just what you did at this time. This book is set in the 70s. And that's just what you did. You just became a housewife and mother. You didn't do anything else. But Neely had something else that she wanted. She had other goals for her life. And so this book kind of outlines, her frustration. And as I said, what happens to her that causes her to be the person that she becomes as an adult in Dimitri's Diary. My next book is The Make-Believe Wives. And The Make-Believe Wives is about a woman who, she and her husband, they get married very young. She goes from graduation gown to wedding gown all in the same summer. She has children. They have 3 young girls very quickly. And those young women, she just decides that, she's maybe a little burned out. She has a career, she has a husband, she has the children, the big home. And she just suddenly realizes, you know what? I don't even know myself. I don't even know who I am, where I am, what happened. I don't know, but something has to change because I can't continue to live this way. And she wants a break from her husband and her family, not because she wants a divorce, but because she just needs a break. She just needs some time to really kind of spend some time with herself and get herself together. And of course, her husband says, nope, not going to happen. However, what does happen is that Janae, who is the main character, she does get her break, but she does not get it in the way she expects. And that sets in motion a whole bunch of circumstances that leads to a whole bunch of things. Mm-hmm. And the babysitter ends up, and she innocently just figures, she's been with these children, these 3 young girls, since they were born. She's been their caregiver, and, so she sees what's going on and she says, I'm going to step in and I'm going to help these young women, these young girls, until their mother comes back, because she feels very bad for them. She's close to them and she empathizes and sympathizes with them, with the adjustment of their mom not being there and not knowing where she is. And, well, another unintended circumstance happens as a result of that. And Faith, and who's the babysitter, and Evan, who is Janae's husband, they kind of develop a little bit of an attraction to each other. And finally, Janae returns, and then that's when the fireworks happen. And if you will, I'd like to read a passage from this if I can find it very quickly. Okay. I should have marked it, and I did not. This is a scene that happens. I really hate to read this scene because it tells a little bit more of the story, but it's absolutely my favorite chapter in the book. And I thought I could find it quickly here. Yes, here it is. So I'm going to skip forward just a little bit and just say that Janae arrives home, and after she's been away, and she finds Faith, who is the children's babysitter, in her home when she gets there. Let's see where we go, where I want to start here. So Janae rings the doorbell because she didn't think clearly enough. She didn't think far enough ahead to remember that she didn't have her keys to get into the house. And the door opened, and Janae found herself face to face with the woman who kept her place warm while she was away. Faith didn't seem surprised to see her at all, though Janae thought she should be. Janae wondered what she was doing opening the door to the home where her husband and her children live. The two women stared at each other for several minutes as if attempting to memorize every hair, pore, and blemish on the other woman's face. Faith pulled the door open further and stepped aside, allowing her easy passage into her home. Her home. She didn't want to respond to Faith's welcoming gesture because to do so would mean it was her to give, and it wasn't. She had stolen it. Janae entered and looked around her furniture. Her furniture had been rearranged. One of the living room walls was painted a different color, and now a different woman stood cooking in the kitchen. Janae sniffed the air. This was not an ordinary meal. It smelled fancy, important, like it has significance. It was prepared with love. Janae's stomach growled, indicating its agreement with her assessment. It sounded like a bear in heat. Janae returned her attention to Faith. "You can leave now," she declared as her way of dismissing this trespasser from their lives. "I can't," Faith said, simply as if those words resolved the issue. "You walked in here, didn't you?" "I did." "Then if you leave now, it shouldn't be too difficult for you to walk yourself up out of here. Now, if you stay much longer, that might not be the case." "I'm in too deep." "Well, that sounds like a personal problem to me." "It is," Faith admitted. "Listen, I know you've been playing wife in my absence, but I'm back now. You are no longer wanted or needed here." "Well, that's not what Evan says." "Oh, really? I'm sure you misunderstood him. What purpose could you possibly serve now? I don't even think I want you babysitting my children anymore." Faith's breath caught in her throat, but she quickly recovered. "I think you should ask your husband about my purpose." Janae's stomach growled even louder, as if the two women in the room didn't hear it the first time. "Obviously, my stomach thinks her purpose is to feed me," Janae thought. Ignoring her rumbling stomach, she propped her hand on her hip and rolled her neck. "Why don't you tell me?" Faith didn't respond. Janae glared at her. Unbelievable, she thought. She detected something in Faith's eyes and her stance, even her body language. "You're in love with my husband, aren't you?" Faith didn't speak, but Janae's stomach did once again. "Oh my goodness, you can't possibly think he feels the same way, do you?" "It doesn't matter what I think." "Are you sleeping with Evan?" "Absolutely not." Faith peered into Janae's eyes for a few seconds so the woman could see the truth in her response. "I'll be leaving now," Faith declared. "Tell Evan I'll talk with him later." "No, you won't. You will not be doing that. And please leave your key on the table on your way out." "I'll give it to Evan, but only if he asks for it." Janae approached Faith slowly, stopping just short of bumping her toes. "Obviously, you are a little confused. This is my house, and you will give me the key." Faith moved closer to Janae, threatened the tops of her toes. "I'm not confused at all. I didn't get the key from you, so I'm not returning it to you." "Listen, I don't know what went on while I was gone to make you have so much confidence in my house, But rest assured, you will be put in your place very soon. Or maybe you'll be put in yours. Faith snatched her purse from the counter and walked toward the door. She stopped suddenly with her back to Janae. Oh, a couple of things before I go. Naomi's taking a nap. And I heard your stomach growling. There's seafood lasagna in the oven. Help yourself. It's ready. Then she left for what Janae hoped would be the last time. Janae walked into the kitchen and pulled the glass dish holding the seafood lasagna another woman had lovingly prepared for her family out of the oven. It looked as delectable as it smelled. She was trying to figure out what to do with it when her body once again cast its vote. She went to the cabinet and found glasses where the plates used to be. She continued opening cabinets until she finally found what she was looking for. She snatched a plate from the stack and scooped a portion of the lasagna onto it, placed a forkful in her mouth. It was scrumptious. Once again, her thoughts turned toward the glass dish. For a moment, she thought about passing it off to her family as something she prepared. Then she realized they would never believe it because this wasn't the type of meal she would cook. It would be a shame to waste the lobster, crab, and shrimp, but she made a decision in that moment. Janae decided to throw the rest of it out, just like she threw Faith out. She scooped another portion onto her plate, turned on the water and the garbage disposal, picked the dish up and turned it upside down over the sink. She watched as the cheese, noodles, sauce, and seafood found their way down the drain. She looked at the clock and realized she had time to cook something else for her family and began searching through the cabinets and refrigerator to see what she had to work with. Janae decided to cook some of her specialties: fried chicken, macaroni and cheese, black-eyed peas, and a few other things if time allowed. She would replace memories of Faith just like she was replacing her meal. Janae kicked off her shoes and jacket and got to work. And that is, what chapter is that? Part of chapter 33 in the Make-Believe Wise.
Wow.
My next book is The Make-Believe Family. And it is the next book in the Make-Believe series.
Mm-hmm.
I had no idea that I would be writing a series, a Make-Believe series. I thought The Make-Believe Wise was it. I thought I had told the story. Mm-hmm. But as it sometimes happens, you end the story, the book ends, but the story doesn't end in your head. And so this book is about Faith, who is the babysitter in the Make-Believe Wives. It is Faith and her love interest, Jameson's. It is their story. And so that's what this book is about. It talks about family, Jameson's family, and how they treat Faith, how they all get along or not. And there are a couple of appearances by Janae and Evan from the Make-Believe Wives in this book as well. I'm going to see how it goes. I do have the beginnings of a third book in this series that is called, tentatively titled, The Make-Believe Couple. And so it features a couple of characters that meet each other in this book. They're not the main characters, but they do meet each other in this book. Actually, there are Faith's best friend named Macy and Jameson's best friend named, why is his name escaping me? But anyway, they meet each other in this story. Mm-hmm. So that is the Make-Believe Family. And look forward to the Make-Believe Couple. I don't even know when to tell you to expect it. Maybe by the end of the year. We'll see how it goes and see if it really pans out. Sometimes they don't. Sometimes we have an idea and they just don't work out. But I'm hoping that this one will. So look for that probably sometime in the towards the end of the year. Now, my most recent book is What is God's Name? And this is Christian fiction. This is about Nevaeh, who was the main character in this book. It's about her journey. She all she really wanted a dad. She was 17 years old, but she really wanted a dad. And you know, her father, she'd been told anyway, he was deceased, and so she'd never met him. She didn't know anything about him except that he was her father and that he was deceased. And some things happen, and Nevaeh ends up in a whirlwind of trouble and instability. And all she wants to know is who is this God that people keep talking about? My living situation doesn't tell me that there is a God, first of all. And if he is, why should I believe he cares about me? Looking at how I'm living. And it's about her journey to figuring out who God is and answering the question, what is his name? What is his name? And so I do want to read an excerpt from this book. And this is an excerpt from further into the book. It's chapter 22. It's part of chapter 22. And Nevaeh has found herself homeless. And I wrote this chapter specifically to show the church something about themselves. Okay. So Nevaeh is homeless. She's been to a shelter that's nearby, and they tell her they can't help her until later on because intake doesn't happen until later on in the evening. And this in the morning when she's, first gets there to see if she can get someplace to stay. And they point her to a church across the street. So she gets to the church across the street and she walks up to the church. Several people were moving about. She held conversations while others were heading inside. A couple of them examined her and seemed to find her lacking. Nevaeh made eye contact with several of them, smiled and greeted them, but not one of them acknowledged her presence.
No.
She stepped into the building, hoping to find the help she was told she could receive there. A man stood at the entrance to the sanctuary with a red cup in his hand. She thought he was an usher who would greet her and take her to her seat. "Good morning," she said, greeting the man, who responded by looking at her and barely nodding his head. Nevaeh didn't feel any warmth coming from him whatsoever. A woman appeared seemingly out of nowhere and headed toward Nevaeh. Her demeanor was both welcoming and helpful. "Good morning. Is that a donation for the homeless?" she asked, pointing at Nevaeh's bags. "No, ma'am, I am the homeless." The woman took Nevaeh in and responded, "You don't look homeless." The woman took "I'm sorry, I may not look like it, but I am. Can you help me?" "Come with me," she said, heading toward a hallway that led to some offices. "How did you hear about us?" "The man I talked to at the shelter across the street told me I might be able to get some assistance since he can't help me until later." The lady released a breath and shook her head. "I wish he would stop doing that." "We don't really provide that kind of help," she told Nevaeh, who was taking in the "Jesus Loves You" posters as they walked down the hallway. The two entered an office and the woman closed the door, then took a seat behind the desk. The woman clasped her hands in front of her on the desk. "Tell me what's going on." "I just came out of the foster care system and got my own apartment. I had to move out this morning because I was having problems with my landlord." "Okay, so you need a place to live." "Yes, ma'am. It would even be helpful if I could get a hotel room for a few nights. I don't know if I'll be able to get a bed at the shelter and I have nowhere else to go. I don't even have to eat if I can just have a safe place to sleep." "Do you have a job?" "Yes, part-time." "Why don't you get a full-time job?" "I can only work part-time while I'm still in high school. I graduate soon and then I'll move to full-time." "I see. Are you a member of this church? I don't think I've ever seen you here before." "No, I'm not a member of any church." "Do you believe in God?" "I don't know much about him, ma'am." "I'm sorry, we can't help you." "Why?" "You have a job, which means you should be able to take care of yourself." But like I said, it's only part-time until I graduate. We don't care why you can't find her full-time. The other problem is we generally only help those who are members of our church. We do make exceptions sometimes, but only for those who share our beliefs, and clearly you don't. But I'm sorry, young lady. I suggest you go back to the shelter at the appropriate time, and hopefully you can get a spot over there. You're welcome to stay for service if you'd like. God bless you. The woman came from behind her desk and opened the door, clearly dismissing her. Nevaeh left the office and decided to stay for the service since she had time. She entered the sanctuary and found a seat in the back. She heard the minister speak about the need to minister to those who needed help, although no one seemed to care that she was a soul who desperately needed some help. All she wanted was to find some stability and comfort. She'd never gone to church that she could recall, but she'd heard about it. How could she ever become a part of this club if no one would even acknowledge her presence? How could she connect with the people to the point someone might whisper the password she needed to gain entry into this secret society called church? Obviously, she wouldn't find help here. They were too busy doing ministry, as the speaker preached about, to notice a person in need of ministry had just walked in the back door in a black skirt, pink button-down shirt, and black patent leather shoes. After a while, she checked the time to ensure she wouldn't be late in getting in line at the shelter. She needed to make sure she was in the best position possible to get a bed for the night. She got up, took her bags, and moved to the exit, right past a picture of a man she assumed was God, with his hands outstretched towards her as though he was willing to help. What a joke, she thought, considering there was obviously no help forthcoming. So again, that is the second part of chapter 22 of What is God's Name?
Wow.
So that wraps up my books. What did you think about that? I heard you react.
Yes, I'm picturing it. I'm like, it's true. It is.
Yeah,
true.
it is.
It is.
It is, because the first part of that, when she walked into the church and the people didn't respond to her, that actually happened to me. I was looking for a church home. Mm-hmm. And, I didn't have the additional pressures that she did, but just the feeling of not being welcome in a place that, you're supposed to be able to get some type of help and relief, and you're supposed to be able to get, you're supposed to be able to find God and learn about God and feel his love, if nothing else. Mm-hmm. And I walked up and I remembered that day, I said, I got to put that in the book somewhere, because that happened to me. I'm not that special. It's happened to someone else. And I think sometimes the church needs to recognize that, sometimes we are a little bit like a country club. We can kind of be that way. Mm-hmm. And, I just wanted to express that in this book. I thought it was the best vehicle to do so.
Mm-hmm. I know that happened to my aunt. She was just driving around. She got out the house. She was doing something. She was in another town. Mm-hmm. And visiting, and she was just driving through, and she seen the first church, and she was just dressed, casual. Mm-hmm. This was about 10, 12 years ago. And she went into the church, and they kind of gave her this look. And the ushers asked her, what did she want? She said, I come to get, the word. And the lady said, you dressed like that? She says, yeah. And the lady escorted her up to the balcony part of and she said she went on up there. She got her message, and then she left out. She said, "But I'll never come back to that church again."
Yeah.
Wow.
And unfortunately, some people won't go back to any church, because Nevaeh was unchurched, and so what was her feeling, having her first experience with, church, with God? Like that, how would she feel, and why would she ever want to come back?
Yes.
Yeah, but she does find God, but she finds him in a very unlikely place.
Yes. Okay, tell us about your publishing journey.
Well, I published my first book, actually it's almost 10 years ago. And I chose to self-publish because at that point I just didn't, honestly, I just didn't think that a publishing house would even consider my work.
Mhm.
Um, I didn't have the confidence at that time to even consider, submitting a query or anything with a traditional publishing house. So I began to just publish my own books, and that's what I've done up to this point. But there is a desire, a little inkling down in there that one day I might want to see if I could get a traditional publishing contract. But until that time, I'll continue to self-publish.
Mhm. What made you want to become an author?
Well, it wasn't even. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. It wasn't that I really set out. I didn't set out to become an author. I just began to write. I began to hear poetry, and so I would write it in little short essays and things of that nature. And my pastor had told me, he said, you put words together very well, because I'd written a tribute for his it was some type of service honoring him.
Mhm.
And I'd written a tribute. And he said, you put words together really well. He said, and I believe God is going to use you in that area. And so I would write the poetry that I would hear and the short essays that I would hear. And I was working, as I mentioned earlier, as a computer programmer. And we made a family decision that I would quit, because our son needed someone to kind of be around. Just, he wasn't, there was nothing, really bad going on, but we just felt like he needed a little bit more guidance, and needed somebody here to kind of, just make sure he was okay and that things got done the way that they needed to get done. And we went on a cruise, probably a couple of months after I'd quit my job. And I really felt like I was just like I had hit a brick wall, because for all the years previous to that, I'd worked and I'd gone to school, and all of a sudden, boom, now what? And we were on this cruise, and we were in Cozumel, Mexico. And my husband, he was playing in the water. I like to look at the water, but I'm not really interested in getting in the water. I'll put my feet in maybe, but I'm not going to get in the water. So I was laying on the beach, on a blanket under this big umbrella. They were grilling fish and vegetables. And I just remember asking God, what now? What am I supposed to do now? And God dropped my first book, Secrets, into my spirit that day. I'd never written a book. I didn't know the first thing about writing a book, but I knew what I believed God was saying. And, I had to do something with these characters, because, when that happens, you got to do something with them. And so I began to write. And like I said, it took me about 15 years to write the book. And it wasn't that I wrote every day. It was, different things, life was happening. And so for months, maybe at a time, I wouldn't write. My husband had some cardiac issues, and my son he was diagnosed with cancer. And, there was a lot that went on during that time. But finally, about 9 years ago, I finished my first book. And since then, I just have not been able to stop. And I have tried. I have tried. Because sometimes it just is stressful. It can be stressful. If we allow it to get that way. And I have. And I've tried to stop writing, but I figured out the best thing for me to do is to just take a break sometimes. Just take a break and not be so pressing so hard and pushing so hard, because then it starts to feel like work. And that just wasn't working out well for me. So, but that's how I became an author.
All right. What are you working on right now, or you're not?
I was supposed to be taking a break. However, I, I and I haven't been pushing really hard, but I am putting some things together for the Make Believe couple, which would be the third book in the Make Believe series.
Mhm.
And I do have a novelette that I'm planning to release very shortly. It is called The You I Never Knew. And it was inspired by events surrounding my father's death. My father passed away a little over a year ago. And I was just dropped like right in the middle of his life, rental properties, tenants, stuff I didn't even know was going on. I had to figure out how to handle and how to deal with. And I thought I was on the verge of finding out something about my dad that I did not know. And that didn't ever happen. But it sparked an idea in my head. What if upon your parents' death, you found out something that was so drastically different from who you thought they were? How would you handle that? How would you deal with that? So that is what the You I Never Knew is about. That's the basis for that book. So I'm working on those two. I still do have some nonfiction I want to write. I really do. I'm not sure how that's all going to happen, but those are the things that are kind of on my mind to do in terms of writing.
Okay. How can readers get in touch with you and find your books?
Well, the best place is to find me at darlissbatchelor.com. That's all one word, darlissbatchelor.com. But I also have an Amazon author page. I believe it's amazon.com/author/Darliss Batchelor. I can be found on Facebook as well, author Darliss Batchelor. And that's how people can get in touch with me.
Okay. You know about CBLR.
Yes, I do. I
God.
do.
So are you going to attend the virtual?
Absolutely, absolutely. And I signed up today to do they're offering authors who had signed up to do author takeovers.
Yes.
And I've never done an author takeover, but I decided I'm going to step out of the box. And so I signed up today, sent the dates that I prefer, and we'll see what happens.
All righty. Is there anything else you would like to add before we close?
I just want to thank all the readers. But before I do that, I want to thank you because you are such an advocate for writers and authors. And I really appreciate you for having me and other authors on your platform, because you don't have to do it. You don't have to do that. But, I know it's in your heart to do. But, I just appreciate you
Thank
in
you.
doing that. And I'd like to thank everyone who has supported my literary journey in any way whatsoever, whether you read a book, whether you were a beta reader for me or an editor, and I've had some great editors. I would just really like to just say thank you for your support and your prayers. And I ask everyone to continue praying for me as I move forward down my literary journey.
Thank you. Thank you. All right. This is Queenie Clem with Queenie's Book Talk and Reviews. Happy reading. Bye, y'all.
Bye.